going on with the transition of EMS services in Creekside Village, or Creekside Park. Just want to get a quick overview. Just like the township, we are covered by several special purpose districts, or ESDs. This is a map of all the ESDs that provide fire service within Montgomery County. There are 10 ESDs plus ourselves, the Woodlands Township, and the city of Conroe. We have several ESDs that surround the Woodlands, including Spring Fire Department on the south side in Creekside, as well as Magnolia to our west, Needham to our northeast, and South County to our east. Many fire ESDs in Harris County. This is just a big map of them. The Woodlands is that small gray area in the center of this map at the top. Harris County is also covered by several EMS ESDs, including ESD 11, which covers the bulk of Creekside Park. That little gray boot area, if you will, between 8 and 11 is also inclusive of about 30 houses now that are getting ready to expand on that number of houses that are within the Woodlands Township. So ESD 8 covers some parts of the Woodlands Township as well as ESD 11. And this is a better direction of the area along Creekside Forest Drive, where we have the division between ESD 11 and ESD 8. ESD 8 has taken over that area. They annexed that in November of 2015. Tax rates within Montgomery County. We all pay the Montgomery County Hospital District, and that's their 2021 tax rate is 5.8 cents per hundred. Harris County ESD 11 is still working on establishing their tax rate, but last year it was 3.3 cents per hundred. And ESD 8 for 2021 has established their tax rate at 9.4 cents per hundred. On September 1st, ESD 11, or their new ambulance service, we call it ESD 11 Mobile Health Care, will be replacing Cypress Creek EMS at 7 o'clock in the morning on September 1st. They're going to staff 28 ambulances. 10 of those will be 24-hour units, and 18 of them will be peak time to get with the bulk of the medical calls during the daytime, as well as transfers. We will have a 24-hour ambulance station in the Woodlands at our Fire Station 7 on Kirkendall. With respect to COVID, we have seen a huge increase in the number of calls on both sides of the creek. That has stressed not only our hospitals, but our ambulance systems as well, because our ambulances, when they get to the hospital, can't unload their patients for a lot longer than they're used to. And rather than taking 30 minutes at the hospital, it's taking sometimes 2 or 3 hours to unload those patients. That stressed both EMS systems, but especially Cypress Creek EMS over the past several weeks as they transition from their providing service to ESD 11 to becoming a new private entity. That has seen extended response times, especially in the Creekside Park area. And so we are working with our firefighters to make sure that they work through with their dispatch. If they need to ask for a Montgomery County hospital unit to come down and assist, they have that ability to do that. They have to work through the Cypress Creek EMS dispatch system, but they understand that not only is it a problem with the COVID, but also as approaches September 1st, Cypress Creek EMS has been losing employees, and they no longer are staffing the ambulance that are at our Fire Station 8. They've actually dropped down to 15 24-hour ambulances from 18 and 19 that they had just a month or 2 months ago. And we're just working with them as we get towards now 18 days away, that transition on September 1st. Can answer any questions that you might have.
I think Director Milner, you had this?
I appreciate that, Chief Buck. I think some of the concerns I have is after talking to some employees at Cypress Creek, there have been days where they've only had 11 ambulances in service out of the approximate 30 they're required. And I'm aware of at least 2 resident call situations where it took between 45 minutes and an hour for an ambulance to reach the home. So during this transition period, it seems that the potential for response to life-saving necessities has been compromised during this transition by Cypress Creek, and it's been a challenge for several residents. The other concern I have is I believe that there is also a difference in response time or planned response time for those services that are going to migrate into Creekside Village as opposed to the current response time plan that your team implements in the non-Creekside Village. And in some cases, looking at numbers that I've had forwarded to me by the Montgomery County Hospital District and Harris County, it could be up to 15 minutes response time for a basic life-saving situation in Creekside, but that is not the standard that you or your team use in the other villages in the Woodlands. And it would appear to me, based on that there could be the situation where residents in Creekside Village are outside of Creekside Village have 3 times the opportunity for life-saving opportunities than potential residents in Creekside Village, because the average response time from the last report I got from your department was around 4 to 5 minutes in the non-Creekside Village. And if we're talking about just under 15 minutes for Creekside Village, that's a significant delta between the expectation of basic lifetime services arriving on the scene. And I can tell you that residents in Creekside Village, where I live, are concerned about it, and I've had a large number of them reach out to me feeling like their life is being respected a little bit differently than the rest of the Woodlands. That's their words, not mine. And so that's why I wanted to ask you to come and talk about it today. And I think we still need to look at September 1st moving forward, understand, is there going to be a disparity between level of service between the villages in Montgomery County versus the villages in Harris County, the village in Harris County? And if so, why Creekside Park Village should accept the fact that there's going to be less quality service?
Okay, let me start with making sure we differentiate. Within the Woodlands Township, the Woodlands Fire Department responds to all medical calls, and the response times are across the board are the same for the firefighters.
Right.
And we are very fortunate through y'all's direction that we staff not only an ISO 1 rated fire department, we staff first response paramedic, advanced life support service. Every one of our fire trucks has at least one paramedic on board. So as soon as we arrive, within 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, we can start advanced life support and life-saving procedures. With respect to EMS transport, there is no doubt that as this transition has been taking place and that the problems that have cropped up with Cypress Creek EMS, there has been significant delays in getting an EMS transport ambulance on scene. With how ESD 11 is going to run their system, everything that we've been working with them seems like that we will be pretty similar to what's going on in Montgomery County Hospital District, that the ambulances will be responding within a timely fashion, and that the number of ambulances is actually going up. Again, as stated in the earlier slide, 28 ambulances, a lot of them stood up during peak times, 10 ambulances overnight, 24-hour period, including one in the Woodlands. And so we will absolutely be closely monitoring, making sure that the systems are similar on both sides of Spring Creek, to make sure that our residents are getting the services that they pay for and that they deserve. And so we feel comfortable with where ESD 11's direction is taking them. And but again, the transition and the startup is certainly going to be a lot of things will crop up, and we're going to monitor that. And anybody that has questions, they can contact me or my staff at any time. We're here to serve, and we want to make sure that we take care of our people regardless of where they live.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I have a question on this topic. So is there another service model we could be engaging with that would create a consistent service provider across the entire township?
Not unless we were able to incorporate. At that point, then we would have the ability to drive that service. But we don't provide EMS service, EMS transport service. We could look at providing that, but since we don't provide it right now, and as a special purpose issue, we don't have the ability at least my understanding, to start our own EMS service and to displace a special purpose district and ESD that's already in place.
Okay, so as a city, we would be able to possibly shift away from having two ESDs in Creekside Park and have a uniform service provider for the entirety of the Woodlands.
Absolutely. Just like recently we, in the Indian Hill area in Creekside, we annexed where they're going to build 150 homes. At that point, when we annexed them into the Woodlands Township, that service, because we provide fire service, we were able to have that land come out of Harris County ESD 7 and into the Woodlands Township. That would be similar to what we could do as a city. We couldn't, it's my understanding, do that right now as we're currently structured.
Okay. And it could even, and I know we had some dialogue on this, the potential is even Montgomery County Hospital District, our current provider, could serve in Creekside Park, Harris County.
We could contract it with them to do that, yes, sir.
So then we would have a singular service provider for the entirety of the Woodlands.
And during the transition as ESD 11, the taxing district was working to replace Cypress Creek. We partnered with Montgomery County Hospital District to make a proposal to take that particular area of the Woodlands. That ESD 11 did not accept that offer at the time, but we continue to push.
And as I understand it, and you can tell me if I have this wrong, if we went down that singular service model, because Montgomery County Hospital District's taxing authority ends at the creek, the service model for Creekside Park, even though it's the same provider, they wouldn't have a property tax. They would have a fee-for-service model.
Don't know how we could work through that. I'm sure there's smarter people than I that could come up with that. But again, as I said earlier, just remind you that not only is there ESD 11, there's ESD 8, Harris County ESD EMS 8. But as a city with a contiguous boundary, we would be able to put that up for a contract or service in some form or fashion.
Which would eliminate those ESD taxes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Buck?
Chief, just for clarification, I know when Douglas Hooten attended the Creekside Park Village Association this month, he also made some comments, at least for now, that residents of Creekside Park need to do what when they call? Do they not need to say that they live in the Woodlands? Or with everyone watching, if people are watching online, I think it's important that we give that information to as many as we can, especially those living in Creekside Park.
Yes, ma'am. Douglas Hooten, who is the CEO of the new ESD 11 Mobile Healthcare, we made a presentation to Creekside Park at their meeting first part of August, and the discussion we had was a similar discussion we've had in the past with the residents. When you dial 911, now we're close to 90% of all 911 calls come in on a wireless phone. The cell tower that you hit with your phone is usually dedicated to a 911 answering center. There has been in the past and continues occasionally to be confusion about where you are in respect to who's going to respond to your emergency. When you call 911 and you're south of the creek, you tend to get either sent to Harris County Sheriff's Department or some cases Tomball Police Department. What we always have advocated, if you can think about it during the time, if you say, I'm in Harris County, but I'm in the Woodlands Township, that's going to get you to the right providers, both fire and EMS. We'll get you there eventually if you can't recall that, but if you start out with, I'm in Harris County, the Woodlands, that's going to get you started down the right secondary 911, which is either your fire or EMS, either the Woodlands Fire Department or ESD 11 or ESD 8 EMS service.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, along those lines, the 911 intake right now, is that the fire department for Montgomery County, or is that going to the Montgomery County 911?
So when you dial 911, you'll get sent, in all cases, in our area, to a police department, a primary public safety answering point. And then depending on where you are, you'll get directed to a secondary. If you ask for police, fire, EMS, if you ask for fire, EMS, you'll get sent. If you're in the Woodlands, you're going to get sent to the Woodlands Fire Department Dispatch Center, or depending on where you are, if you're Harris County, the Woodlands, they'll send you to the ESD 11's new answering facility that's going to be stood up on September 1st, or you'll get sent to Montgomery County Hospital District if you're north of Spring Creek.
So in the same concept we were talking a minute ago about if we were incorporated and we eliminated the ESD 11 and 8, our residents in Creekside Park would get directed to the Woodlands Fire Dispatch
Yes, that was correct.
under 911 calls for service. Okay. Less likely to be delayed in that scenario. Could you go back one slide? Okay, I didn't have the tax rates for ESD 11 and 8 memorized, but good to know. All right, any other questions for Chief Buck?
I would like to just ask for some clarification for people who call 911. Chief, could you go over when and if they would be responsible for a bill? Because a lot of people, some people are afraid to call 911 because they're afraid they'll be tagged with a bill, but most of the time they don't, because they're not transported. But I'd like you to clarify how that works. for
Certainly,
everyone.
with respect to police and fire services, there is no bill. With respect to EMS services, if you are transported, there is a bill, regardless of Montgomery County or ESD 11 or 8. Each of the agencies does have some fees associated depending on what kind of care they might do, even if you decline transport. But that's very few situations.
Right. And is it also possible that if we became a city, that there would be a way for us to bring the Montgomery County Hospital District EMS services into Creekside Park, and these different districts, and you demurred earlier, you didn't want to address this, but I'm just asking you to think about it, that they would maintain their own individual tax rate, but then they would pay for the service to Harris County Hospital District. So because since there's already, someone said a fee, but there's already a fee if they're transported. So that's really not what we're talking about. We're really talking about a way to maintain the service so the contract stays in place and we provide coverage. We really are paying for coverage.
With the tax rate, what the ESDs will tell you that the EMS transport districts, you're paying for them to have the ambulances in place and the stations and the employees. But if you utilize the service, there's a user fee.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. And so if we were to incorporate, then we would be able to direct within the city of the Woodlands how that EMS service is provided.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chief Buck.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion and a second to accept the update and report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right,